Hi, and welcome to Unmasking the Trans Movement with John Euler. I'm your host, Brad Wilder. Today on the show, a Virginia mom, who's going head-to-head with Virginia state law, trying to implement affecting changes in regards to gender ideology. We'll be back with more right here on Unmasking the Trans Movement after these.
Join Unmasking the Trans Movement with John Euler as he hosts Unmasking the Trans Movement's next webinar, where we connect you with the clinical professionals who provide understanding on the many topics that make up this disturbing ideology and answer any questions you may have. Protecting the most vulnerable, women and children. Unmasking the Trans Movement. For more info on guests, dates, times, and pricing, see us online at unmaskingthetransmovement.com.
Welcome back to Unmasking the Trans Movement with John Euler. I'm Brad Wilder. Today on the show, Rachel Twigg is here, and Rachel brings with her, a whole lot of paperwork and a whole lot of fight for an angry mom out of Virginia. She is, spearheading a group of moms that are taking up, the issue of gender ideology within schools, within libraries, within, just your everyday normal lifestyle. It's everywhere. Obviously, we know that. They're trying to force it on people. The laws are changing. We're going to delve into that today as well. We've seen some stuff happen in Washington State yesterday. We've seen some stuff that's going on in other parts of the United States, like Florida. There's a lot happening, and today we're going to bust it all open and get right into it. So with that, let's bring in our wonderful expert, John Euler. John, great to have you back on the show, pal. Thank you very much for being here today. Where do we begin? I mean, the laws, they're crazy right now. The Democratic Party, possibly a little crazier than even the laws that they're implementing. The radicalness of this all is transpired into a real push to bring this ideology into the mainstream. And I tell you what, I think that people are starting to get their backs up, much like our guest today, and saying no, putting their foot down and, trying to take control back of their own lives, back of their own futures, and back of their own country, which is, God bless America.
Well, and Brad, you are so correct. And really this hits home with every country, every citizen, that the trans movement is now worldwide. It has been a strategic plan, a strategic effort, ultimately to enrich Big Pharma, enrich unethical doctors, and, as I contend, to do an end run on age of consent laws. So pedophiles are really benefiting from this, and they are part of the spearheading of this. So I think, as you indicated, Brad, parents are awakening. They realize that they cannot sit by because the floodgates, as it were, have been opened, and we are being metaphorically, and in some cases, like with Kelly J. Keene, literally assaulted. That we cannot be passive anymore, and we have to let our voices be heard and begin to be salt and light. And
so I got to say, we've tried to do that over the last 24 hours. Obviously, there's more than enough people, in the ideology fight in terms of trying to keep it away from locker rooms and sporting events. Democratic Party stood up to that today and did what they did, which was, again, push that ideology forward. And basically tell women athletes that, you can expect a man in a female's locker room. And that's, where are their heads? What are these the best people that America has to offer? Because I tell you what, wow.
Yeah, the Republicans, and here we don't necessarily get into political parties, but to think that all the Democrats in Washington, D.C. voted against a bill that would protect women's sports against sexually deviant men. And so we have Rachel Twigg with us. Rachel, thank you. Brad and I we're obviously energized and exercised about this, but so are you. And I was thrilled as we became acquainted with one another to find out that you, being a busy mom, you have retired or semi-retired from your career. You are a music therapist, so you've also been involved in the field of mental health. You started to see some things and you realized that you had to get involved. You're in the state of Virginia in the U.S., but the the blueprint that you are laying out, I mean, others have for different causes, but your concern is transgender ideology and everything that goes with it. That's what we're about here on Unmasking the Trans Movement. So welcome, thank you, and tell us about your story. And also we want to know, maybe first off, how can people get a hold of you? You have a website, you let me know, and I'll bring it up so people can see that. So tell us your story and how you got involved, and then we'll feature the website so people can go there, can support you, and then also use it as a template.
Sure. So thank you for that introduction. Again, my name is Rachel Twigg. I am the director of a recently formed political action committee called Virginia Women Take Action. Our website is just that, virginiawomentake.action.org. And we're made up of a lot of women, and not everybody's a mother. But it's all women behind the scenes doing everything. And as you see there on the screen, our mission is to protect the rights and well-being of women and children by removing gender identity from all state laws. So we're giving out information, I guess a little background information. In 2020, the Virginia Human Rights Act, gender identity was added to the Virginia Human Rights Act. So now gender identity is protected in employment and in places of public accommodation. And that might seem fine, like, you shouldn't discriminate against people. But what we see and what I see in the women in my organization is protections based on gender identity directly conflict with the rights and well-being of women and children. And so our goal is to raise awareness, get as many people involved as possible, and confront our legislators and our representatives and say, hey, we need this out of Virginia law.
Because you have, right, because what's happening, the reality is this: special interests, I call them dark special interests, are on the move. So we can try to pretend this isn't an issue or it's going to go away. It's not. There's big money behind this. So while busy parents are trying to just live their lives, meanwhile, walking the corridors and setting up meetings with lawmakers are the pushers of the transgender movement. There's, so many different angles. So you have big pharma, you have those in the medical industry, you have those involved in pornography, you have those that are involved. I mean, there's a lot of different angles. They are actively behind the scenes strategizing to move legislation through state houses, both at the state or provincial level and then at the federal level. So if good people do not stand up and let their lawmakers either know about this, sometimes these things are done in backdoor deals, but it's serious because women and children are now at risk.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us, Rachel, how did it occur to you? At what point? And then how did you decide to take action? Because you're talking to parents that are busy, just like you and your husband. Mm-hmm. How did you decide to do this and talk to the parent that may suddenly realize, I not only need to do this, but, oh, okay, Rachel did this, I can do this too?
Yeah. So I guess I'll start back. The first time I ever heard the term transgender or gender identity was about 2014. And I was in school for music therapy. And what I understood it back then was there are people who, for whatever reason, are deeply distressed about their bodies, about the sex part of their bodies, like being male or female, and they would feel better presenting and looking like the opposite sex. And now, to me, that didn't really make much sense, but I thought, okay, well, if the psychiatrist is working with them, if the therapist is working with them, then, it's not really my place. Like, I'm whatever, it's not my business. But then as the years went on, I just started to notice, instead of saying, I was told, don't say they want to look like the opposite sex. They are that sex. If they say that they're female, they're female. I'm like, how is that possible? And they're like, no, trans women don't want to look like women. They are women. And that just didn't make sense to me. But I just thought it was a fringe thing. I didn't think that it was going to affect any real life situation that I might be in. I didn't think anybody with any power or authority would actually take that seriously. And so, a couple of years go by. That's when I got married and had my first kid. And I was working in a psychiatric hospital. And my role as a music therapist was kind of a supplementary role. I would go onto the units and do groups with whoever was there. And gender identity and trans wasn't much of an issue for me then. It was still something that was just kind of on the fringes. And I started hearing stories, though, in mostly Canada. Like I'm a big fan of Megan Murphy, and I was watching some of her content, and she was talking about guys like Jessica Yaniv. I don't know if you've heard of Jessica Yaniv. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this is just some creepy dude who calls himself a woman, and he's going into salons asking women to wax his genitals, like a bikini wax. And he's, booking the appointment as a female, as a woman, and then getting there and exposing himself when the women are like, oh my God, and then he's suing them. And and also and I just thought this was a Canadian problem. I also heard about rape shelters in Canada being vandalized because for not admitting trans women in.
Another word for biological men into a rape shelter.
Yeah, and I just thought it was crazy. And at this time, I thought, okay, well, maybe we can make some accommodations for people who are distressed. Like it doesn't hurt me to call somebody she if that makes that person feel better. And maybe we can make some room in women's spaces. But I was like, there has to be a line somewhere. Like we have to, like Jessica Yaniv, like everybody would see that as a clear line, but they didn't. And again, I was like, oh, well, that's just Canada. Canada's crazy.
Well, and then Jessica Yaniv progressed to in Vancouver. He intended to and posted he was going to rent one of the local city pools and have a pool party for kids and no parents invited. No parents invited.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember that too. And I just, I was telling myself, okay, that's crazy, but nothing like that could happen in America, or no legislator, no president would ever go along with that. Somebody will say, hey, knock it off, man. And so I was naive. I think, so, time goes on. I think 2020, COVID happened, and I was so distracted and focused on everything happening with COVID, that I wasn't really paying attention to what was happening in other parts of the social networks and politics. And I think in 2021 was kind of a breaking year for me, where I realized just how far this was going. I posted in a private Facebook group for music therapists about the sports issue. And I said, I don't think it's fair for trans women or somebody who went through male puberty to compete in women's sports.
So you're being politically correct.
Yeah, I was being politically correct.
A guy that dresses in women's underwear and puts on women's clothes, it's not fair for him to ruin women's sports because they're stronger and faster.
Yeah, and again, back then, like I was more politically correct, and I did think, I'm like, maybe there's some accommodations. Like I believed that these people were really distressed. I believed that they were suicidal and vulnerable to violence. So I thought, okay, they do need some support. Like, let's be supportive. And if you want to be called she, if you want to be called a trans woman, I didn't see the harm in it then. But I thought, like, there's surely some line somewhere. And I thought sports was a pretty clear line for most people. And I shared this in a Facebook group, and people just went nuts. And these were professionals, like other music therapists. And I wasn't working at the time, but they found my resume and started calling my old employers and saying, she's anti-woman, she's anti-trans, she's dangerous, like you shouldn't employ her, don't give her references. And that was really like a wake-up call for me. I just could not believe how far this had gone. And I got called to my ethics board, and that was just so bizarre. And then also in 2021 was when the Wii Spa incident happened, where a man was walking around naked in a women's spa. And there were girls in there too. And again, I thought that would be a clear example to everybody. Like, this is wrong. This man he's naked. He has a penis and he's in the women's section. Like, surely everybody will see that this is wrong.
In the locker room and shower area, and he had an erection.
Yeah, that too. And like, just the way that the women were treated who spoke out about that, it was just horrifying and just a big wake-up call to me. They were called perverts. They were called bigots. They were called like, oh, well, just look the other way, or don't go to a spa if you're uncomfortable seeing people naked. And I'm like, they're not uncomfortable seeing other women naked. It's the man. And again, I just was seeing like how far this had gone. And I always thought that, again, some like reasonable people weren't going to go along with this. But now I'm seeing, okay, reasonable people, like educated people, professional people, they're going along with this. They don't have a problem with a man being naked in a women's room. They don't have a problem with a man being in women's sports. Like, and so that was 2021. And then 2022 was when I started feeling more comfortable speaking up about it. So I started talking about it more with my friends and family, sharing things on social media. I did contact some professional relations that I had, just to let them know, like, hey, this is how I feel about this issue, because I just want to get ahead of it in case anybody ever tries to call my old employers again. And I'm a big fan of Kelly J. Keene, and I was following everything that she was doing. And I went to one of her events when she was in DC, in the United States, and that was great. It was invigorating. It was igniting. And I felt like I really need to do something more. I really need to be more involved. Like, and, just a couple examples that I shared of Jessica Unive, the Wii Spa thing. There's hundreds, countless more scenarios like that. And then also in 2022, I think is when I realized what was happening in medicine. Again, I just assumed like, okay, the doctors, they're taking care of that. If the doctors say that this is the best treatment, then, who am I to say they're wrong? But then when I realized that they're, 12, 13-year-old girls are having their breasts cut off because they want to be boys, like that's happening. They're being sterile, like boys and girls are being sterilized. They're having osteoporosis in their 20s because of the destruction to their endocrine system. And I was like, that can't be right. That can't be right. And nobody's stopping this. So that happened in 2022. And I was just thinking like, I really need to do something. And so yeah, I started speaking out more on social media. I started following politics more and started calling my representatives and sending emails and things like that. And then through networking, I came in contact with a couple other women who had similar goals and similar ideas. And the idea was this needs to be fought at the legal level, in the law, because I don't know if I already mentioned, in Virginia law and in most states in the country, gender identity is a protected characteristic. And so we see that gender identity is the problem. Like, men can compete in women's sports based on their gender identity. Men can be naked in women's spaces because of their gender identity. Children can have their healthy body parts cut off because those body parts don't match their gender identity. So we're like, gender identity is the problem and it needs to be out of the law. So how do we do this? And we came up with creating a political action committee, and that's where we are now.
And Rachel, it's so important for people to remember and recall that not long ago, there was no such thing as any sort of gender recognition as far as any of these men that want to become women and vice versa. So this gender ideology has taken everything by storm. And so the recognition of this in law is relatively new, and it swept through countries. And so really it's now we're playing defense and we're trying to catch up. So you saw the need, you decided you needed to get involved, and parents are more than likely identifying with you. It's like, how did this whole thing happen? So tell us how you decided to form a political action committee.
So we decided to do a political action committee was because we wanted to confront legislators. We wanted to confront lawmakers who are introducing these bills, who are voting on these bills, and tell them, no more. And the political action part, it's mostly like an IRS thing. If we accept donations and we use them to try to influence outcomes of elections, then you have to register as a political action committee. So that's why it's a PAC.
There you go. And people can help donate on your website.
Yes.
There you go. One thing that I commend you for, I think is wonderful, is you are going to prospective lawmakers and current lawmakers, so those that are running for office or re-election, and you have a petition that you are asking them to sign. Would you read that for us? Because that is a tremendous way to screen where a lawmaker or a potential lawmaker stands on this issue.
Sure. So it's a candidate pledge. We do have a petition too, but they're pretty much the same thing. The pledge is what we're sending out to everybody who's running for election right now. They're all going to get a copy of it. And so I will read it to you. Do you want the letter with the explanation part of it or just the pledge?
Let's do both. I think this will be good for people to hear.
It's not long. It's pretty short. So it will say, "Dear Delegate so-and-so," or "Dear Senator so-and-so," or whoever. I'll just read this to you. Virginia Women Take Action is a newly formed political action committee whose mission is to protect the sex-based rights of women and girls in Virginia. We are reaching out to you because you are running for election to the Virginia Senate or House of Delegates or whatever. We ask that you pledge to protect the sex-based rights of women and girls in Virginia. These rights include the right to female-only spaces like locker rooms, bathrooms, hospital wards, rehabilitation centers, correctional facilities, and domestic violence shelters. These rights also ensure that women who need assistance with personal or intimate care can have female caregivers or female chaperones. These rights also protect our ability to use clear and accurate language in personal, professional, and medical settings. We strongly urge you to take this pledge. To do so, please complete the enclosed pledge form and return it so that we may have your name recorded on our roster of pledged candidates. Our organization will notify our members and the general public of our roster. We encourage you to publicize your pledge. We believe together we can restore and protect the sex-based rights of women and girls in our Commonwealth. We look forward to working with you. Sincerely, Rachel Twigg, and Virginia Women Take Action. So that's the letter. And then the pledge part says, I, whoever, and we fill it out beforehand, we put their name in. So I, Senator so-and-so, or whatever. I pledge to protect the sex-based rights of women and girls in Virginia. As a Virginia state senator or delegate, I pledge to introduce, fight for, and pass legislation that protects the rights of women and girls on the basis of their sex. As a Virginia state senator or delegate, I pledge to introduce, fight for, and pass legislation that removes gender identity from Virginia laws, and then sign and date.
And you actually just received your first.
Yeah. It was Jason Wooldridge. He's running for in the House of Delegates in the 89th district. So he signed it immediately. Like, we've sent some letters, we've sent some emails. We sent him this email, and within 15-20 minutes, he sent it back and signed it and said, "Yes, I am happy to support this." And I'm like, excellent. So thank you, Jason.
There you go. We'd love to have Jason on the program, have you back, Rachel, and feature Jason as well.
Rachel, one is never enough. it's going to be strength in numbers, and I believe that you're going to be able to attain that. Obviously, as we've said at the beginning of the show, no political side, whether it's Republican or Democrat, but ultimately this should just be common sense. There should just be a difference of right and wrong. And these individuals need to step up to the plate, whether they're Democrat or Republican, and make this concerted effort like you're putting forward to address this issue. It's a serious issue and it needs addressing. And how do we get there? It's because of people like you. So thank you for all you're doing for the kids in Virginia, because it's not about us old people already. It's about the kids. It's about your grandkids. And we don't say that enough on this show. And I'm going to make sure that we do from now forward, because I'm not here to leave something behind that is broken and totally chaotic. I'm here to leave something behind that I know I'm proud of, like my grandfather, like my great-grandfather, like your grandfathers and great-grandfathers. We have to be patriotic. We have to remain patriotic going forward. And you know the difference between right and wrong, people. Step up right now. There's no other time. I'm going to say it like it is. And you can laugh, Rachel, because I think it's giggleable. But at the same time, I'm dead serious. Like, there is no time left. We are out of time. And I tell you, if you don't organize now, we're not going to get there. So step up, be part of the numbers, get your organizations together. Don't bicker and fight amongst organizations. I've seen that happen a lot. You've probably seen it happen. Enough. You're all fighting for the same damn cause. You're doing the right thing. Work together. Stop it. That's what I have to say to the people that are listening, that are going to be watching, that, maybe have conflict with your group, or you have conflict with another group. The bottom line is we all need to come together, and we all know the difference between right and wrong. And that's something that I wanted to say on the show today, because I think it's very important going forward.
Yeah, and thank you for saying that, because I didn't mention this, but that's something that really motivates me too. I'm like, I cannot have my daughter being told that she's a bigot because she's scared. I'm getting emotional thinking about it, but like, if she goes into a locker room and there's a man in there and she's afraid, I cannot let her grow up in that world. I cannot let my son grow up in a world where people think like that it's okay to castrate him when he's a teenager. Or is it like, I can't. So that's one of the reasons why I'm speaking up. I mean, that's the main reason that's motivating me. Yeah, and there's something else you said, and I'm trying to remember. Yeah. Oh, and yeah, the time thing. That there isn't like, and that's something that jolted me too. Like, time is up. Like, this is happening now. Women are being raped in prison. We haven't talked about that yet, but this is affecting women's prisons. They're being raped in prison. Children are having their body parts cut off. Like, what are you waiting for? What else needs to happen before you'll stand up and do something?
The Democrats are signing laws and bills to make this stuff stick and pass. They're creating a chaotic future. You've seen the streets of Chicago and other cities around the United States, Seattle, Portland. Look, this is not about rebuilding America back better. He can say that all he wants, but he's a liar. He's also a corrupt liar. And he's going to be held accountable. And that's just a matter of time. It's all starting to come out. And as it all starts to come out, good people need to step up and stand up right now. There's no tomorrow. It's today. So go and join and be part of something that you know is going to hopefully make things better. Make America better again. Not great.
And make every country.
I believe that America's still great. I believe that and I'm a Canadian, but I believe that the patriots in the Americas, you're a little bit shy and quiet at the moment. And for a bunch of people who are very, very driven on just patriotism, I think that the voices that are standing up are being heard, but there needs to be strength in numbers. So again, that's what it really comes back to. We've seen the same thing happen here in Canada. When the Ottawa truckers went to Ottawa, we saw a large number of people there. There hasn't been another city in Canada that's been able to put that size of a group together in front of a legislative building or a parliament building here in Canada and have that same reaction or response that Ottawa got during that big trucker fest. And that was really a setting stage for a lot of individuals, and not only in Canada but in the United States, to see that banding together. And I could also show the January 6th issue. That's another big issue. People banded together. Patriots came out. They came out in full force to support, and that's what we need to see happen going forward. So I know that there's a lot happening in the laws, a lot happening in every single state, from Florida to Washington to Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina. I mean, we need to address exactly what you're doing. And the response that I guess that you got from somebody earlier today, Jason, that was a very positive thing. But Jason isn't going to be the be-all and end-all. He needs to share that information around.
Yeah, no, I was excited, but I'm not naive. Like, I know we need more than this. And so we're going to prop him up. And next week, we're going to start contacting the people who haven't signed our pledge and say, hey, why won't you sign our pledge? Why won't you protect the sex-based rights of women and girls? Does gender identity matter more than sex? We're going to start calling them. We're going to start emailing them. And then we have to do some voter communication. We're going to try to get out in neighborhoods and distribute some information and say, hey, do you know that this person that's running for your district thinks it's okay for men to be in locker rooms with girls?
So that's something we love to do here on the show, is call people out just like that, because those individuals' names need to be out there, and we need to show who is who.
That's what we're doing. That's what we're doing. Next week is when we're going to start doing that kind of stuff.
That's right, Rachel. I want to challenge every church, every synagogue, every mosque. This is something that, as Brad indicated, this is not a Republican or Democrat issue here in the U.S. It's not. Every country has their political party. This is something that all normal and decent human beings should be able to agree upon. The protection of women and children. That's what this comes down to. So churches need to get involved, because this is coming to every house of worship as well. So if good people cannot stand up to protect women and children, we are no longer a civilized society, because the barbarians, the hordes, are at the door, and they mean to take no prisoners, quite frankly. So, Rachel, thank you. Thank you for what you're doing.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me. And I just want to add, we talked about this earlier. It's our organization. We're not Republican. We're not Democrat. We're made up of people from all over the political spectrum. We have conservative women. We have, like I said earlier, some left wing. Yeah, right there. You see this Democrat supports female only spaces. Like, we have Democrats. We have stay-at-home moms. We have professionals. We've got a little bit of everybody, but we all see clearly like what this issue is. And we're not fighting with each other about our differences. We are focused on this.
There you go. And again, the name of your website.
VirginiaWomenTakeAction.org.
It's a great website. You're to be commended for taking action, and it can be a model for those that are ready to get involved. There's information on there. Replicate it, make it applicable to your own local community, your province, your state, and on the federal level as well. Yes. Rachel, thank you for being our guest.
Yes, thank you for having me.
And Brad, you said it, and as you always said, this is not our kids' fight. This is our fight. We need to get involved.
Absolutely. Thank you both for being here today. This is an excellent show. It's going to hopefully get more Virginians and other Americans around the country to stand up. And, what you've just done is provide some guidance to these parents and grandparents to get involved. And I think that that information is going to be very, very valuable going forward. So thank you very much for being here today, Rachel. John, as always, it's a pleasure. I look forward to our next episode coming up right here on Unmasking the Trans Movement. You can find all of our episodes on BitChute. You can also log into our website at unmaskingthetransmovement.com, where you can sign up to become a member, get some detailed information that'll help you along your path with getting active and keeping up this fight against this evil ideology. I'm Brad Wilder. On behalf of John Euler and Rachel Twigg, Thanks for being here today. We'll see you next time.